decided to pursue writing. So that's how I ended up here.
Wow, amazing. Can you guys still hear me? I'm not sure. Yes, I think I'm still.
I'll pull you closer.
Yeah, okay. So ladies, this is really an interactive forum for you to ask questions. I do have some questions that came in through email, so we'll ask Emily those for sure. But just a quick introduction. I'm Erin Woodward. I actually founded the Girly Book Club in 2008, and we read 12 books a year, and Emily's was the book in November. So a great book. I loved it. I hope everybody else did as well. If you didn't, that's okay. It's no way that anybody ever writes a book that everybody loves. But if you have any questions for Emily, please feel free to, you can just chime in and ask them. This should work. You'll have to unmute yourself because I've muted everybody, but you can unmute yourself and then you can ask away. And I mean, most of you have videos. It's very cool. I'm going to ask you a question I got by email just so that we're sure to get this one done. And it's from Renata, and she's asked if the story is based on or related to any real events or what inspired you to write it.
So the inspiration, so like I said, I had cancer, but that wasn't the only inspiration. I also work with a lot, I had a rare form of cancer, and so I work with a lot of people who are going through cancer and also who have passed away and their families. And so that had a large influence on it. But I think the idea really came from my kids were 3 months old and 18 months old when I was diagnosed with cancer. And I was only given a 50% chance of making it 3 years and a 30% chance of making it 5 years. And when I calculated what that meant and what age they would be, I realized that they wouldn't know me if I didn't beat the odds. And so I wrote journals about like our time together and all of those kinds of things. So it was, and I didn't have a deep dark secret and I wasn't conveying any kind of message, but it did spark this idea of what if there was something that you couldn't bear to tell people while you were still alive? What would you tell them once you had gone?
Amazing. And but you wrote Wreckage first, correct?
Yeah. So Wreckage was my first project, and it was one of those projects that just kind of nags at you, and you're like, I got to keep writing this. I got to keep writing this. So, but I have one of my friends was like, you're doing so well with your books. I think I want to be an author. And I'm like, oh, awesome. I love it when people want to write. And I'm like, what kind of stories do you write? She's like, oh, I don't have any ideas. I'm like, oh, you might not be a writer then. Like, I always have ideas. Like, I have about 10 of them backlogged in there, So these happen to be the first 2 that made it to a full-length novel, but there are lots of them percolating.
Awesome. I don't want to just monopolize the conversation. So ladies, honestly, please feel free to jump in. And if nobody has a question, I'll ask another one.
I have a question.
Go for it.
I'm in New York. I was just wondering sort of how you were inspired to pick the story that you did and just the way that it led back to like a big news story, which, we see similar stories popping up. Was there a story that you saw in the news that you were kind of grabbed by? Sort of how did that come about?
Yeah, it's like a dirty little secret. It's not very secret anymore, but I love Dateline and those real news stories. And I mean, Wreckage also has some of that in it. So I don't know, like my sister's always like, I'm a little scared of you, like how much you like them. So it was really from watching some of those stories and seeing how often people lie and cover up and these things that have happened in their lives, and that real life is sometimes stranger than fiction, and there are times that when I'm doing my research, I even have to take a step back from what reality actually is, because I'm like, no one would believe that, So, so there wasn't one specific story, but just this whole interest in these cases and what could have actually happened and those kinds of things all wrapped into. And also I talked to a toxicologist, and he kind of inspired me with some of the stuff with Jessie too. So that was pretty fun. Thank you for asking.
Any other questions from the audience at this moment? The question, or the husband, and I read so much, you have to forgive me. I believe his name's Luke. Am I correct there?
Yep.
Okay, great. And his kind of like tainted past and with his family and everything. I hope that's not from personal experience, but did you have to do a lot of research, or how did you kind of develop that character?
Several places. There is some history from personal things that added to the depth of that, but also a lot of research and discussion with people who had gone through certain things. So I don't know, that theme actually came out stronger than I even meant for it to at first, you know. It's very interesting that as I get to know my characters, there are decisions that I've made about them that are different than it turns out that they really would, things they would really do or what really would happen. And so that story kind of evolved from, I knew he always had this background, but it became more of a internal battle as I wrote more of Luke. So, I think a lot of authors feel this way, that your characters have their own personalities and their own lives, and I definitely felt that with that character, you know, because I had never written, I wrote from a man's point of view in Wreckage, but it was interesting, my primary point of view being a man's point of view in When I'm Gone. So that was also an added challenge that helped me get into his headspace.
I just felt like he was a really real character. I really liked Luke as a character. He was probably my favorite part of the book, actually. And his relationship with Annie. Do you have a friend like Annie?
I don't, actually.
Okay.
The only person in that book that's based off of a real person is Felicity.
Okay.
So, I told my friend, I'm like, I wrote a character that is you, and I'm like, just read the book and see if you can find her. And then she texted me, she's like, oh my goodness, I found her. I'm Felicity. I'm like, yes, that's you. So that's the social worker, or the
his girlfriend, right? Or who he's dating, sure.
So really, she's the only one. So the other one's not so much. Natalie, a little bit like one of the teachers from my kids' school, but not. I mean, I clearly don't know her that well. Just some of the outward things. So.
And the mother-in-law, because she must have been fun to write.
She was, and actually I had to back off on her a little bit because my editor was like, she's nasty.
She really is.
I might have a theme of nasty mother-in-laws because I have a nasty mother-in-law in my first book too, so I'm like, ugh. But so I'm not saying pointing any fingers at mother-in-laws, but yeah, she was fun to write, but she was also hard to write because I wanted there to be some redemptive quality to Terry. You know, like I didn't want it just to be that she was horrible because she was horrible. Like I didn't think that she was the same as, like, say, Luke's father or Annie's husband, Brian. I didn't think she was an abusive personality. I think that she truly just didn't express the way that she cared about her daughter in a way that was understandable to just about everybody, you know. But at the end, I think that really came out with her love for Jessie, immediate love for Jessie, and her care and love for her grandchildren.
Yes.
But I kind of liked that about her, that she got her moment, you know, to finally do the right thing and be a decent person.
Well, I was worried about a custody battle or something at one point.
Oh, I'm gonna call you next. Good idea.
Now, can I just ask a question? Does anybody else have a question right now for Emily? Yes, Renata, please go ahead.
I just have a question in general, because there is a lot of violence, you know, in the book. So Brian and the father look, and did you try to highlight this issue, that it's an important issue in America, and maybe there is a lot of hidden violence that we don't see, but maybe we could do something about it? I mean, because there, you know, there are neighbors that can hear. But people are very private here, and they maybe don't want to interfere, but maybe they should. I don't know if you wanted to convey a message like this, perhaps.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me was two things, was the idea, I think it was said several times, the idea of everything looking okay on the outside, not really reflecting what things were like on the inside. So we talk about that with like the lawns that are manicured and look good, or the house. I'm sorry, hold on 1 second. Oh, I don't know. So I think that's one idea, which is, I think everybody has this outward persona, like where you don't know really what's going on inside. So that's the first thing. And the other idea was that abuse isn't love, you know, like Annie said, or I think it was Annie said, that he loved her too much. And I've heard that over and over again with working with women who have been through abuse, where they think that they just love them too much. And that's such a fallacy, you know, and I think that's one way that we get stuck, you know. So those were definite things that in my mind, if someone could read that and see that that the abuse that perhaps was going on in their life, which doesn't even have to be getting beat or having mirrors thrown at them, you know, there were other ways that Brian didn't treat her right either. But to know that that's not love, I would be honored, and I'd be so glad if people could read that and see that in their own lives. So, or help someone else. But I also think something that was very important in the book is that no one could save Annie, and no one could go in and save her. She had to save herself. Mm-hmm. So it's really, and that's really how it is with abuse, is that you have to inform and empower, and then they have to do it themselves, you know. And I think we saw that with Annie, and then in the opposite way with Luke's mom.
Mm-hmm. So. Yes, it was very surprising to me how Annie was protecting Brian. I mean, I guess it's just difficult to understand in a situation like this, but not to have this like self-defense mechanisms, and really, because it was really getting to a point where she could die. I mean, and then Luke's mother, I mean, protecting the father so much. I mean, I had an impression that she actually wanted to die, because if she she knew she was being, I mean, you cannot be without any care after giving birth. This was maybe she was really gave up. Not to call an ambulance. It's just unthinkable. So I mean, but I'm sure, you know, things like this happen. So you made it very believable, although, you know, you would think, how could this happen? But yet it does. So I think it was very powerful, you know, both characters. Yeah.
You know, I think the thing that happens is that people are like, well, don't you want to protect yourself? Mm-hmm. But the staying is the protecting yourself. So I've heard it like barbed wire. If you're wrapped in barbed wire, if you stand still, it doesn't hurt that badly. But if you're wrestling against it, trying to get out, then it's cutting you up. The only way it actually stops hurting is to get out. But standing still when you're inside of it is the best way to not have it hurt. So I think that that's what these women were doing, is they were like, well, if I stand still, then that's going to go away and it'll stop hurting, because it hurts too much to try and get out all of the way. So I think that it's hard for us to understand from an outside point of view, but I do think they're protecting themselves by not leaving, strangely enough. Mm-hmm. So, because, you know, women are far more likely to be harmed or killed when they're leaving a relationship. Mm-hmm. So it's a dangerous thing, but you could see that even in the story, you know.
Right.
So, thank you for asking. That was a good one.
More questions?
I like seeing all your faces.
I know, right? It's fun. I'm just like scrolling through people's faces to see if anybody's raising their hand. I do have some questions, and I'm very much want to open it up to the floor, ladies. If you want to discuss these, I mean, I'm sure one of Emily's, one of the things that would be great for Emily is to hear. I mean, Emily actually provided these questions to me. Thank you so much. But it must be really interesting to hear people's perspective on what you've written. And obviously you have your dialogue about what's written and your thoughts on the answers to these questions, and we'll definitely hear from you. But if anybody wants to chime in, the first question is, and this is probably the most kind of pertinent to the story. So the question is, Natalie kept a lot of secrets from her husband, Luke, some life-changing. One of the biggest reasons for her letters was to reveal this information to Luke in a slow, methodical manner. This plan gave her comfort, but ended up being a confusing and painful process for Luke. When do you think she should have told Luke her secrets? In life, or are there ever secrets that shouldn't be told? Now, if anybody has an opinion on that.
I'm all ears.
Leanne, go for it.
I think she should have told him before she passed away, because it would have been easier on him. She could have explained it all. The way it rolled out, it was, I think, a lot more painful and confusing for him than it would have been if she was there to explain it. Plus, they could have met their daughters together and had that family time together while she was still alive.
And did you think that, Leanne, just to go on from that, did you think that she should have done the letters at all, the handwritten letters? Like maybe they could have done the actual secrets before, but then to have the letters afterwards? Or do you think that they're kind of like all wrapped up in one?
No, I think she could have still done the letters, because I think that helped him. It wasn't like she was just gone. He still had that. And she did have stuff in there that I think helped him, like making kids pancakes or stuff like that, like specific things with the kids. I would have thought she maybe would have wrote some letters to the kids too. So like when they grew up, they would have these letters from their moms as well. But yeah, I think I would have done both. Told them in person about the big secrets, and then still wrote the letters.
Does anybody else have an opinion on that? Was it better to do it after or before?
I wasn't mad that she didn't tell him while she was alive, because I totally understand why. I think that she should have said something before she passed away, like maybe when they met in college. But I can't see how anyone could ever talk about that. It's not just like his child, it was hers. And I think for her, it was really painful, and that's why. So I get why she didn't. But I think ideally she should have. And even waiting till they were pregnant with a kid seemed a little bit sort of like an interesting choice of time. And I don't fully understand why. I don't know if that's something that you thought long and hard about, but I was sort of curious.
Oh, why she thought it was okay to tell him then?
Yeah, why then?
I think that just was when she was sure that he wasn't going to turn into his father. When she decided it was okay to have a child with him, and that it was okay to move forward in that then she felt like, okay, he can know these things. But also I think that she was afraid he was going to go and try and get the kid back. And so once they had their own child, then I think she felt that wasn't going to be something that he would try and do, go and get the child back, which clearly wouldn't have been possible. But, I think that was her biggest concern. I think something else I thought about, and this is maybe a weird way to say it, is I'm like, oh, it's weird to say this out loud, but like, I wouldn't, if she had had an abortion, would we have expected her to definitely tell him? I mean, probably at some point it would have been a good idea, but, so I just am like, I think that you're right, that it was her place she went through it, and it was her place to finally to tell him when she did. So that's a good question.
Yes, Leanne.
I also thought when at some point she thought the child was dead. So I mean, I don't think I would have told at that point, because what would be the purpose? It would just hurt him. But once she knew that she was alive, especially after she had met him, I think I would have brought him to it at that point.
Right. Personally, I think I would have too. But
All right. So the next question, I'm going to skip the question about Annie, but the next question is Natalie, again about Natalie's letters. Natalie's letters were more than just letters of comfort. She gave some very pointed and sometimes uncomfortable suggestions as to how Luke should move forward with their family. Natalie was a very loving mother, but do you think she fully thought through the impact of her letters on her children? Do you think her letters were controlling or loving, selfish or selfless? What is the line between the two? And I would urge you to remember when she tried to hook him up with another woman.
While you're thinking about that, where that came from was when I went through cancer. My ex-husband now, but at the time, I sat him down and said, "This is the kind of woman I would like you to look for in the future." You know, like, not that I could control like who he went for, but you know, I'm like, I want someone who could be a mother to our children, and if they called her mom, I wouldn't care. I would just be glad that they had a mother figure, you know. So it kind of, and I was talking with one of my friends once, and we were both like, this is so weird to admit. We were like, let's compile who the perfect like mom would be if you couldn't be there anymore, you know. So it's a very strange thing, but we both were going through the same type of cancer at the same time, so that's where that came from. But anyway, so I forgot what the question was. Oh, the suggestions. Yeah, if they were selfish or selfless.
Does anybody have an opinion on that? So you're saying, Emily, but it's interesting that you said that, because that means it comes from a place where you're looking after your children again. It's not about him. Like, originally when I read it, I'm like, oh, she wants him to be happy and find a new wife. But your point of view is finding a good mother to look after her children.
Well, that was one of the things that we talked about, you know. I guess I'd want him to be happy too, you know, but I know that for me, I had such young kids that was, of course, something that I majorly thought about, was like, it was just hard for me thinking that they grow up without a mom in their lives. So though we talked about wanting our spouses at the time to have a companion, it was also this idea of them having a mother figure in their life, which was not exactly what happened in When I'm Gone. That's just where the idea came from. So I worried about the timeline though, because 4 months, I think it was only 4 months that into it that she started talking about him finding someone new. And yeah, I understand why he wasn't ready, but so.
Yeah, that seems very quick.
Yeah.
Especially like I thought it was interesting when I was reading it, because I thought she's still there. She's still very much present. And I mean, I've gone through breakups before, and until they're really out of your life, you can't really think about somebody else. So I think that it was very, I don't think it was very believable to think that that would have worked out for him, because I mean, I did think it was probably a little too controlling of her.
I think it was naive of her too. I think she was looking from way far away, saying, "Oh yeah, you're gonna be ready then." But she has no idea. She's never lost, you know, a spouse before. She didn't know she knew what it was like leaving. She didn't know what it was like staying. So I think it was maybe not selfish, but naive completely.
Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
Yes, I think that it was a bit controlling at times, and I was thinking, well, she could have just left her diary for him, and probably he would read the whole thing without dozing, but the information would be the same. So it, might as well be in the diary, I think. And sometimes I thought that she just has to say things because to finish her, her stories, because she needs to. But I was afraid that she would leave a message like the baby's dead, and that would be terrible. I think that would be totally unnecessary to leave Luke with this knowledge that the baby was lost. Or I was even expecting that perhaps there was a different father for the son, thing like that. That I would think that she should have, if that was the case, she should have keep it as a secret. So I don't know if, I guess the purpose of the letters is get to know the character gradually. I mean, we get to know her through the letters, so it's a nice way of having the character like the other characters, right? You have them, in scenes. So it's a nice way to get to know her gradually as well. So for that I think the letters were useful for that. But as for leaving a message or leaving an impact and make it, and doing it for the kids, maybe she could have talked to Annie more to try to help Luke, or to others that could convey this message when she was gone. Yeah.
I think it had been a secret for so long. I don't think she was ready. I don't think she was ready to tell him when she started writing those letters. She wasn't ready to give him. So I really think, but I've thought that there was a moment where she really didn't even think that she was going to go through with it. I truly think that she had to make this big choice. Am I really going to do this? Because if you think about it, she could have just told Dr. Neal no, and he never would have known, or it would have come out in a different way, or so I do think that the letters, the gradual nature, because she did just give one letter to Annie, right? She just gave one to her, and so I think that she could have done something like that with Luke, but I just think that it was this process of her getting ready to tell him as much as it was getting him ready to hear it. I think that's kind of why it came in chunks. Good question. You guys are good.
All right, I'm going to move on. And this is a question that I really liked when I read it. Do you think Natalie predicted a connection between Annie and Luke as she was planning out her interventions in their lives? If not, do you think she would have been happy with his decision to pursue that relationship? Do you think that Annie and Luke are a good match romantically? And then if you could write a final chapter, what would actually happen between Annie and Luke?
I like hearing the answer to this one.
Does anybody have any thoughts on that relationship? I mean, that was very relevant through the entire book. And you could just feel that through the entire book. I'll answer it. Unless sorry, did I cut somebody off there? Leanne, did I cut you off?
You can go ahead.
I just kept waiting for it to happen, and then the whole, you could just, it was obviously written very well, and so that there was a lingering hand here, or just that she was so good with the kids, or you just really, it kept building and building, but I always was, is this really going to happen? Because it's her best friend, and it seems a little wrong. But then who would he be better off with? So I did keep waiting, but then that whole cycle of abuse, and when that all kind of happened, I was like, oh, okay, it's definitely not going to happen now. He's supposed to save her, and that's all that this is about. So I wasn't sure for a long time whether they were going to actually have a relationship or not. And then in the last scene, what would I want for that to happen? I don't know. I guess I don't know, something with a memorial all about remembering their lost friend and wife, but building the future together. I don't know. Leanne, what were you going to say?
Yeah.
I was going to say that I did like the fact that they got together. I think they are a good fit for each other because she was her best friend, and she really gets along well with the children. They love her to death already, and she's been quite helpful. And for the final chapter, I think I would like is it Jessica? Is that the girl that's sick, the daughter?
Yeah.
Jessie, yeah.
Jessie, yeah. I would like her to get better, and then they could have like this big family sort of all get together and be happy and live happily.
I like these endings. They're awesome. So I wrote an epilogue to this, and it was cut. So I know what happens, but it's very interesting because there are people who don't want them to be together at all, and there are people who think that they were perfect together. Personally, I don't think that Natalie predicted them having a connection. I don't. You know, I think that surprised everybody. Like all of them were like, wait, what is happening here? How am I feeling? You know, but it does make sense because she and Natalie got along, but we're all so different. But in the epilogue that I wrote, which is unofficial, they do end up together. I'll just say that.
I mean, who's better if you think about it, though? Realistically, I mean, now, Natalie's gone, so like you said, you would want your husband to remarry and be happy. And I mean, who would keep her memory alive better than her best friend?
Right.
And make sure that she's remembered to her children, and that you'd rather have that than some strange woman who never knew. At least I would.
I would. Sounds good to me. High five.
Any other thoughts on this before we move on?
May I ask why the epilogue was cut? You decided to cut it? Or the editor? Or really? Why? What was the reason?
The specific term was it was a little too Nicholas Sparksy. Like, he sold millions of books, but whatever. They thought that it just kind of tied it up a little too nicely with a bow. So it was Luke visiting Natalie's grave 20 years later. So you got like a really good look at everything that had happened and how it had all turned out. It was very, very short, but yeah, it was, let's just call it a strong suggestion that it was maybe a bit too sweet. And but I kind of like the ending where even without the epilogue, I actually loved the epilogue. It's like my favorite thing that I wrote from the book. That's okay. You have to, kill your darlings, as they say. But I like the end because he's in the waiting room, and that's exactly what's happening in his life. He's like about to start very many new things. He's about to find out what happened with his daughter. He's about to start a relationship with Annie or decide in that. He's about to move forward in so many ways. And so I kind of love that idea of him just waiting for that new life to start. It's a perfect place for us to leave him because it's almost, we met him, but after the funeral, he wasn't ready to move on. That was like his moment when he's finally ready to move forward in his life. So yeah, I still miss that epilogue.
Another question, and we talked a little bit about it before, but this question kind of goes a little bit deeper, and it's about Natalie's mother, Terry. And she was oftentimes harsh and unlikable character that we discussed, but how did your opinion of Terry change as Natalie's secrets were revealed? How did her final decision to help Jessie affect your opinion of her, or did it? Does anybody have any opinions about that?
It didn't really change my opinion of her, just because she never treated her grandkids poorly. She always just treated Luke poorly. And like I've seen a relationship like that in real life, and regardless of how she treats her grandkids, how you treat like the person who marries in, I think says more about you. So not to say that she's a terrible person, but the fact that she's nice to her other grandkid to me doesn't really mean anything. And I actually found it a little bit annoying that she knew the big secret. I mean, obviously she knew that her daughter was pregnant, but that she had the big reveal all along that Luke never had, I thought was a little bit crappy.
Oh, I like that. That's true. And she kept it a secret too, which I kind of was like, I think that would be a very Terry thing to do though, you know, because she always saw Luke as an outsider.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a good point. Someone recently told me that they went to visit their sister who had just gotten divorced, and her ex had done some really bad things, and they all got together, and my friend who had gone, they just treated him like normal. And she said, and at the end of it, her sister said, "Thank you so much for treating him nicely, even these things." She said, "The way that you treat him, that will always be their dad. And so if you treat him poorly, it'll only reflect badly on you. It won't reflect badly on him." And I think that's absolutely true about Terry. That was a really good point.
I mean, I understood why she didn't like Luke, I guess, a little bit at the end. So that definitely shed light, because I thought she was just being, I mean, yeah, she's a small person, but I understood at least that there was like a source of her anger, I guess. Emily, can I ask you a little bit about the writing process? We have met with a lot of authors in the past, and a lot of them get very, very attached to their characters, and some go as far as to be very, very sad when the whole process is over. Did you experience anything like that, and how long did it actually take you to write the book?
I didn't feel any sadness at the end. I always feel like I leave them in a place I'm comfortable with, you know, and I always, even though this one was cut and Wreckage, it was never even presented to them, I always write a personal epilogue for my characters, so I know what's happened to them. And so I think that gives me that I feel good at the end. I know where they are in their lives. I know what happens to them afterwards. And that gives me a little bit of comfort. But I'm sorry, what was the rest of the question about my writing process?
Yeah, just if you, I mean, yeah, about the characters and whether you were upset and how long it took you to write.
How long it took me to write? It took me about a year. I'd say 9 months to a year from concept to finished product.
Okay, and how long did Wreckage take you to write?
It took me 3 years.
Okay.
Book. So I think your first book takes longer. You're learning how to write, you know, when you're going through your first book, and you also don't have a deadline, so you're just kind of fitting it in when you have time, and you know, it's your passion project. It's your thing you do in the middle of the night when you can't sleep, and you know, and though I absolutely love When I'm Gone and the characters, I started to understand what it was like to write for a job, you know, where you're putting in your hours every day, and you know, so it was a little different. It was a bit of a transition, but I actually, Wreckage, I wrote a large chunk of it one-handed while nursing my youngest.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it was really just because that was the only time I got to sit down, because I have, you know, 4 kids really close together. So yeah, it was just a little different, but I still find that there's a point in each book, because I just turned in my 3rd book, and there's a point in every book where it just suddenly all comes together and everything just falls together, and it comes really, really fast, you know? So the last chunk of When I'm Gone, the last chunk of the book that I just wrote, it just falls together, and you just know what's going to happen. Even though you planned it, I don't know, it's different when you get to the actual, you know, it's the difference between an outline or an idea and like, or thinking what Disney World might be like and being there.
Right. You can't tell us about your new book, can you?
I can tell you a little bit.
Okay.
I don't have an official title yet, but it's about 2 sisters, and so, which is first time I have not written in a man's point of view at all. So, but they live in a small town, and one sister is a firefighter paramedic, and the other sister is a musician and a stay-at-home mom. And the paramedic gets a phone call, a call to her sister's house where shots have been fired.
Oh gosh.
So she goes and she has to then treat her sister, and so her timeline tells us about how she's taking care of her sister and then finding out who shot her, and then her sister's timeline tells us who shot her.
Wow, that sounds very good.
Or a bit of a little bit more like the thriller-y than my other two have been.
Okay. And I haven't read Wreckage, I'm afraid to say, but can you tell us what that's about for anybody who loved When I'm Gone?
Sure. That one is about a plane crash, really, when it comes down to it. So that's where Wreckage comes from. But it's two people being interviewed after they've been rescued off of an island that they've been on for almost 2 years, and they're being interviewed by a Dateline type person. So one chapter is the interview, but they're lying in their interviews about what happened to cover up secrets of things that happened. So so the next chapter tells you what actually happened. So you get the chapter where they're telling the interviewer, then the chapter of what really happened, until all of it comes together. So
Oh, it sounds really interesting.
that one was fun they're all fun to write afterwards. It's just when you're writing them that you're like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to do this. But yeah.
And do you have a set schedule for writing? Is it like a 9 to 5, or you're looking after the children at the same time?
It's a little bit of both. Now that they're in school, they're all in school. So my youngest just went to kindergarten. It's a little bit easier because then, it's only, they go to school at 8 and they're home by 2. So it's a bit of an interesting timeline. But so I try and write during those times. But I also, I don't know, it's hard to explain. Writing, you can't always just be like, happen now. So basically what I've done is say that there are times I won't write. So I'm like, I won't write when they come home from school. I won't write when we're having playtime. I won't write when they want to go to the park, except for sometimes I'll write at the park, depending on what the deadline is. But so it's like, so my laptop, people have asked what your office is like, and I'm like, I don't have an office. I just have a laptop. That is my office, because I've written in the McDonald's play place. I've written by the pool. I've written sitting on the floor while my daughter's in the tub, So it's kind of fun for me to go back through my books and be like, oh, I wrote that while I was making dinner and like stirring in the pot at the same time I was coming up with that scene, So maybe not recommended, but sometimes that's when it hits you,
For sure.
Probably not a normal process either. But
I think every writer has a very unique process.
yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments? That's it, that's all? Well, Emily, do you have anything else you'd like to share with us before we wrap up?
It's just so, I love, this is my favorite, is talking to readers. So thank you for everybody that asked questions and chatted. Like, I absolutely love it. So, please continue to connect with me. I love getting emails. Like, I respond to every email that I get. So if you had something that you wanted to ask me and didn't get a chance to, then go ahead and you can visit me on my Facebook page, or you can email me. It's on my blog. So that was like someone just emailed me. No.
Well, thank you so much. Emily, you've been such a great sport with us, with the Girly Book Club, and working with us. And you took pictures of the book with our sticker on them, and you sent me questions, and now you're live with us. So thank you. I wish all of our authors were as easy to work with and as helpful as you are.
Thanks. It was so fun. It was an honor.
And yeah, I'm certainly will share all about your new book once it comes out with everybody. So keep us in the loop.
I will. I definitely will.
And thank you, ladies, for all being on this, our first virtual Girly Book Club meeting. I hope to do further ones. I think this was a great success. So thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, ladies. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.